Welcome to episode 217 of the Brewgooders, the beer, comics, and a sort of geekery podcast. I'm Jeff. A wise man once said, I was thinking about this the other day, like a wise man once said something really meaningful. Because he was so wise, he was ultimately not heard because people were so used to him saying wise things that he went unheard when he said this really wise, notable thing that probably could have changed the world. And now he's probably dead. And in the middle, to my left, is Andrew, who's sorting something out. and on the far right, but not a member of the far right, as far as we're aware, wearing his daughter's headphones, is
how dare you? These are mine. These are mine. These have been handed down to me. Thank you very much.
Hi,
how are you guys doing? You're right.
Sorry, is that it? That's the wise man story. There's no. A wise man once said something, but no one was there to record it.
Yeah, and now you're stuck with us on a Thursday night.
And now we're stuck with us.
That guy probably said something. I don't know who that guy is because he's dead, but he probably said something amazing. And
that's the zenest thing you've ever said, mate. That's the wise man once said, Mr. Miyagi. Yeah.
I was watching Cobra Kai the other day. Started again at season 1. And still laugh out loud in every time when Miguel says Sensei, like he's cleaning the windows, like, Sensei, is there a particular way you want me to wash these windows? He's just like, no, I don't give a shit. It's just like perfect. So joining us this week, we're really lucky to have Ben Cullis of the 77 once again. He explained to us before he went to air that he's already moved furniture. So anybody that's wanting some wardrobe shifting action from Ben this evening might be massively disappointed. But he's coming on to talk to us about the new Kickstarter they've got running, which is called Lols, and it's 85% funded, and it's their first deep dive into all ages stuff in comedy. So I'm really excited to have Ben on to talk about that. It's massively different. We've also got Stephen Ross, who is one of the creators on that, and I'm really excited to get him in all the way from LA. So he's not drinking. Because A, he doesn't drink, and B, if he did, it would be like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. That's all right. You can drink at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It's fine. We'll bring him on and just have a wee blather. But I love it when Ben comes onto the show because I don't have to interview him. I just let him run the show for 20 minutes, and then it's hang around for after that. We've got trailers to talk about. We've got Doctor Who and all the sort of geekery, comic-y stuff, and we've got our beer festival to chat about and stuff, so a full show. But yeah, without further ado, please welcome the CEO of 77 Limited, Mr. Ben Cullis, and Stephen Ross, all the way from LA.
Hello.
Hi, guys.
Hi there.
How are we?
Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, and as I said before we started recording, since we're supposed to drink on camera, I brought my energy drink. So I'll get more gregarious as we go along.
I'm quite surprised.
Do you never do the whiskey show?
No.
That would last about 15 minutes.
No, I have a feeling I would be a nasty drunk.
I have to thank Norman Lamond, who came down from Scotland to see us at Lawless last week. That's Dave Healy's bottle, and I've ended up with it. So bad, Ben.
Yeah.
Norman Lamond.
Aye.
Did he not used to be Chancellor of the Exchequer? Or
That's Norman Lamond.
Lamont.
Lamond is from somewhere else in Scotland, and he's not a Tory, so don't worry about it.
Hopefully not. No politics. Because on the right, but not as far as we're aware, a member of the far right. Like John there at the top.
So are you guys going to review the Acolyte after you're done with us?
I watched it, so we don't really review things. We kind of just shit on them for 5 minutes and then move on. So.
Okay.
Don't shake your head. That's exactly what I tend to do when we start talking about the Acolyte.
No, I haven't seen it yet. But I've heard the reviews.
If you're looking for a deep, meaningful review of something by people who understand it and have looked into it, you've come to the wrong place. If you're
No,
looking for,
that's not us.
looking for some men to moan about how something's not as good as it used to be, then this is the show for you.
Hey,
So
we're old guys. Everything's not as good as it used to be, is it? Come on,
Ben, they've obviously never heard the Everything Comes Back to 2000 AD podcast, right? Because that's basically it.
And if you have heard it, guys, I don't know if you have heard their shows. They're legendary. They kind of go on for about 2.5 hours as a short show.
Well, Bertus has to talk about who died, and then we talk about the comic industry dying, and then we talk about movie theaters dying, and
because we do
there's sort of an overarching theme. Talk about our love for 2000 AD dying. So there you go.
Kid loves dying. It's not the comic it used to be, is it?
No.
I think Andrew was going to say there, and I think we try and stick to an hour and a half, and I think that's like you say, you don't drink alcohol. That's probably, I think if you go further, if you drink beer on a podcast and you go further than an hour and a half, all the like maybe little rules that you make up, like don't talk politics, don't mention this, don't mention the war, all that sort of stuff. Like it just goes out the window by an hour and 35 minutes. It's like
yours is definitely a show that it's of two halves.
Yeah.
Well, what'll happen is I'll drink one of these and then one of those, and then we don't do it live on camera. It's like an audio thing. So the other guys will be like, "So, what do you think of that, Steve?" And then there'll be like silence, and they'll be like, "Oh, he's off in the bathroom." So because I'll just like silence the mic and bolt.
That's the one when we come off the air here. Like you can see it. It's usually, I think it's usually me, but you can start to see after an hour and a half, we all start to kind of move around like that. And the minute I end the stream, we're all like, right, back in a minute. It's just like,
end one stream, begin another stream, so to speak.
Exactly.
Yes.
Quite. So how's it going? LOLs is doing really well, eh? Like you guys launched it yesterday?
No, a few days ago, last weekend. It is a departure from the usual safe ground of comics for older people. We are genuinely looking to actually get comics out to your children or your grandchildren. Although we know a lot of our backers from previous different campaigns will come back, but. It's just interesting when you deal with a whole bunch of new creators. They bring their kind of fans with them as well. You have to deal with a whole new bunch of questions and sensibilities. And I'm thrilled tonight that we've got this guy here. I hope he's sitting there on your screen because this story had been promised for how many years for 77 Steve? You can tell me now.
Yeah, like 2 or 3, maybe as many as 4. Oh, there it is.
Yeah. If you go to the campaign and scroll down, there's a guinea pig or a hamster or a ferret or what creature is it, Stephen? I've forgotten. Sorry.
All right. So the proper name for guinea pigs are cavies. Thus the name, the Cavaliers.
The Cavaliers. I thought. See, in our country, cavalier means an attitude where you kind of throw caution to the wind. You have a cavalier attitude. Oh, we got Sanders. There we go. Yes, exactly. So that's launched by Nigel Parkhouse. Matilda Sharp is doing some stuff there. McCormick Sharp. Keep coming down. That's Lil Penny. So she's the younger version of Penny Pentagram, who's appeared in a few of our scripts. And this is Steve's creation.
The Cavaliers, me and Chris Evangelou, the artist.
And that's Mike Walters from Lowborn High with Dave Healy, Vicky von Frankenstein. And I don't know if you guys way back in the day remembered the Derek the Troll from all of our teenage years. It first appeared 40 years ago, I believe, in White Dwarf. So that's Lou Stringer's characters coming back.
So were you going to call this comic Derek? Because you've got like 2 characters named Derek in it.
I think Des or Dells. Del Boy. Yeah, that's right. We got some animals, got some animal action, which is always good.
Mm-hmm.
And Sonia, we couldn't kind of do the same graphics with her. So Sonia Long, she's been doing manga for like 15 years, and her bibliography is really long. She did A Brush with Magic, and she does a lot of how to do manga books. So yeah, what's there, about a dozen stories, 15 stories?
And good t-shirts.
Aye.
So yeah.
How long have the stories been?
We've got a couple. We've got one which is 4 pages, a handful which are 4, including yours and Matilda's, and Sonia's, I believe, is 4 as well. And then the rest are like single pages. So it's a standard form kind of book comic we're used to in this country. So if you were to pick up Phoenix or something like that, that's what we get. That video doesn't seem to be scrolling.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'll fix it. There we go.
Not quite sure what that was.
Is there music?
Yeah, there is, but it's quite loud, so I was just like,
yeah, we've been very naughty. We've just lifted it. It can't be on YouTube because YouTube is so good at screening copyright infringements. But it would appear that Kickstarter don't care. You can put any soundtrack on anything, and they just accept it. So,
I put a video up on the Brewgooders YouTube last week, and it's been viewed more than anything else we've ever done. But because I lifted a clip of a wrestling show, it can't be monetized at all. Which it uses Dwayne The Rock Johnson's music, and as a result, can't be monetized at all. Which is like, oh, fair enough.
What was the rest?
Into a conversational piece that we can now extend a little bit. So, Stephen, Lucha Libre, Lestat. I need to know, how big a wrestler is this dude in is it New Mexico or Mexico itself where he's wrestling? Because he did a video for us back in the day.
Yeah, he's from Mexico City. He lives around here now in Southern California, a couple of cities over.
Yeah,
he's a local wrestler, so it's not with one of the big promotions. He sort of freelances whenever they want him. He hasn't really wrestled for a while, for about a year, because of, well, he didn't wrestle during COVID, and then he came back for a few months, and then he's got a day job that keeps him busy, so he might get back to it if he gets the call. And they just haven't been having as many promotion local shows either. So, but back in the day, we would go see him at 3:00 in the afternoon, and that show would last 4 hours, and then we'd rush across town to another venue in a shittier part of town, and they would literally wait because half the people going to that second venue were coming from the first one, and half the wrestlers had all just wrestled at that other one too. So it could be a long day.
We've got a big show in Glasgow next week, and it's like the way that it's the WWE are playing at our big venue in Scotland.
Oh, really?
And it's going to be on the telly and stuff, the TV. But then
not every
small, what's that?
Not on my TV.
No, not on your TV. But every small company in Scotland have booked like a church hall or and all their shows are at like random times because they're all trying to so there's a show on in a nightclub just down in like the garage on Sauchiehall Street, which is about a 20-30 minute walk away from the venue that WWE are in, are literally doing a show at 11:30 at night so that you can.
There was one time they had scheduled a show for the afternoon, and half the wrestlers didn't show up, and I was friendly-ish with the promoter, and I was like, "What happened to everybody?" And because some of the guys had to wrestle like 2 or 3 matches because they were the only ones who'd shown up. And they said, "Oh, one of the wrestlers bought the WWE pay-per-view, and they're all over at that guy's house watching it."
You see, the Lucha Libre wrestlers, if they were doing that, could they not just go into the back and change into a different path and things like that? Come out as a different character, and people wouldn't know that you're just like, you've only seen 7 guys in this tour of guys.
Some of them do have very distinct body types.
There was a guy I used to help out with a company in Scotland, and there was a guy that wrestled 3 times in one night. So he wrestled as himself, and then he would put on he had like a Lucha Libre mask that was like what's that? It's like tartan, but it's like what the chaps wear. Burberry. Is that what? Yeah. The Burberry. The Burberry wrestling mask. So it came out as like a weird, like, I don't know, I don't, Stephen might not get the reference, like a chav. So he was like a Scottish, like, oh, what's happening, man? Like with his bottle of like, and like he came out wearing a tracksuit, so he could hide his whole body underneath this tracksuit, and came out as a different persona. And then he went away, and then he did the same thing again. He dressed up with a lucha libre mask that was like commando camouflage, and he came out as like a wrestling soldier, Mexican soldier type. And he wrestled like 3 times in one night, and nobody knew it was the same guy. It was quite clever.
That's amazing. Wow. Well, they're all white guys, right? So it'd be they all look alike. Tell me that the guy who did the Scottish wrestler, tell me he came in to Princes of the Universe from Highlander. That was like his entrance theme.
I'm trying to think what it was a Scottish chav, so it was like Happy Hardcore he came out to, which is like a John up here that's horrendous. So how is it, like you were saying about Ben, how like when you start a new project, because obviously the 77, like as the CEO of the 77, you've overseen the 77, but you've also overseen like This Comic is Haunted, Pandora, and with bringing new creators, they bring in new eyes and like their own sort of how is that translated? Because obviously, like the 77, I would say the 77 is not all ages, but it's definitely a wee bit more mature. How has that been an issue? Like when you're talking about?
I mean, I think basically it feeds back on itself as well. In the 77 comic, the original title, which just finished number 10, we funded and it's available now. That is the launch vehicle for all the others, and we realised that we didn't want to have it as just a general genre comic because we were covering too many things. So we've more specialised that as the fantasy science fiction title. So Dave Healy's then gone ahead and he's going to be doing number 4 of This Comic is Haunted. Blazer never really was a part of the 77, although they have had stories crossover. The very first story that was done, the Tinkling Triangles, should have been in Blazer, but Blazer didn't start at the right time. So it is actually a Blazer story. I have to come back. So we had Blazer reviewed on the Gentleman Show to my left here, and one of his co-conspirators said, "Oh, what's this about the Blazer strips appearing in the 77? There's no continuity there." Well, actually, yeah, I agree it was, but it was the original Blazer stories. So yeah, it was just, you guys, if you know the story about how it began, it was like, it wasn't some bunch of people got together with like huge backing saying, what we're going to do is we're going to start a comic thing and we're going to invest loads of money in it and we've got big bucks to do these things. It was like scrabbling around, being kind of like, garage band, literally just putting together something like a demo and then seeing where it fell. And where it fell was the 77 shrunk in size bit got its own titles. The Blazer was spun off from it. Haunted's done the same thing. Pandora, when Joe's up and running again, but it's also Pandora's turning into Penny Pentagram. She's getting a comic this year. And, when you do the guest titles, friends, so, when I did this one for John Wagner last year, we're doing Pat Mills's book this year, Ian Gibson's Lifeboat. When you do that, the kudos and where people start calling you just goes up, isn't it? Because they go, oh, you could do books. Would you do my book? Or I'm interested in doing some stuff for you. So, we don't have to put like such a big call out now for submissions. And like I say, pulling the man's leg to my left here, we do wait for some strips. And eventually the title was created. I created Lowe's so your strip could go in it, Steve. How do you feel about that? Eh? That's just
excellent. I feel vindicated. Yeah, the thing is, well, in your defense, Ben, I work with an indie company in the United States, Antarctic Press, and it's chaos. Indie comics creation is just chaos. Yeah. So it's trying to keep kittens in a basket. So and I would say, Ben,
that guy. So Stephen introduced me to Joe and Ben Gunn, who I think if you look down the hit parade or the lead positions, Antarctic are about 6th, are they, in terms of comic publishers?
They've been around for 40 years, so I don't know about size and profitability, but
we had a series of our stuff printed with them. We went across the state, Great stuff. We wouldn't have done that without your help. So, you know.
And I was so happy. I mean, those covers looked fantastic. The content and the covers looked fantastic in the American format too. So, we ran the Division 77 and Martian Law. Huh?
Was there some Sawyers in there as well? I'm trying to remember, but it was definitely...
we didn't get that far. Yeah. Okay. We did the Martian Law, Division 77, and some. I forgot what the other ones were. That's terrible. But anyway, it was a good run. It was a very good run. Everybody was very happy. And if you ever want to come back, Ben Dunn says you're more than welcome to with open arms.
We'll chat about that.
Yeah. But anyway, I had a thought. Oh, so what happened with the Cavaliers was Joe Healy had asked me to do an animal story for Pandora, and I said she loves rabbits. She's a bunny lover. Bless her heart. And I've loved guinea pigs since I was a kid. I was just fascinated by them and loved them, and had probably a dozen of them over the years. So I said, well, can it be a guinea pig story? And she I couldn't see her face, but I'm sure she rolled her eyes and said, sure. And I was like, okay. Now, what she had wanted was something like Marnie the Fox, which was, I guess that's a well-known strip over there, like a well-known classic strip. Have you heard of it?
Nope.
I can't say I've heard Marnie.
I can tell by the silence that's a no. Okay, I had to look it up.
I'm also like rubbish at like.
She told me after the fact, so I looked it up, and it was basically like a fox surviving in the wild, and it's told from the fox's point of view. It was from one of the actual kids comics from back in the day. So I was like, oh well, this isn't that, because the other thing I really like is Dan Dare. So I was like, it's basically guinea pigs doing Dan Dare shtick in space. And so I had a coworker who really wanted to get in comics, and he had taken a lot of, he had a degree and he was doing storyboard work. He had a degree in art and all that. And I was like, okay, we'll work together. It'll be handy because you're like right here. And right when we got to the edge of when we were going to start, he got married, he moved away, life took over, and he submitted it was originally a 5-page story. He got 3 pages done. They were looking great. They weren't like done, but they were mostly done. And they looked fantastic and all that. And then he just overthought it and crashed and burned. And it was very, very sad. And then I never heard from him again. So that was even sadder still. So I went through a couple of other artists. And then we have a fellow named Chris Evangelou, who's well known in the Southern Contingent group. I met him through the Zoom chat, but I guess you know him in person, Ben.
I've met him, down in London. Yeah, one of those chats. So do you want to quickly explain what the Southern Contingent is, or shall I do that?
Yeah, I just know it as a Southern Contingent. I guess it's for people from the southern part of England who meet up at.
So it's fans of 2000 AD, in effect, turn up in a pub.
What's that?
It's fans of 2000 AD turn up in a central London pub.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and they get rowdy and all that kind of thing. So anyway,
as good as it used to be,
Yeah. So during COVID, obviously they couldn't get together, so they started doing Zoom chats, and because I can't get over there every time there's a signing, I joined in and I got to see everybody like I see you guys, little squares on the screen. We can chat, have a great time, and it was done on a semi-regular basis during COVID. And so that's how I got to know Chris. And so I kind of asked, I knew he was an artist. He called himself the Super Surfer on Twitter. So I looked at his artwork, and he contributed some things to our Drawktober, it's basically Inktober, but it's a 2000 AD themed one. And so he had done some for that, and he was good. So I was like, all right, let's give it a try. And so it worked. And then I cut the 5-page script down to a 2-page story, and Ben accepted it for laws. And I'm really happy because as much as I love Joe and as much as Pandora was, as awesome as Pandora was, I really wanted to be an actual kids comic book. because my day job, I sell kids books at a big independent bookstore. So I really wanted to be part of that. And so it worked out. I think the weight actually benefited it in every way possible. So
we were talking yesterday because we had a read through, didn't we? You did a read through for me, which was just fantastic. Just to
yeah, I read them.
cues about some words that were being used. He was really worried it was fine. I was too lazy to read it and just wanted to read through. And I think basically you could do voice talent, you could do voice work.
Well, I do the story time every week at the store.
Oh, do you?
I was going to say that's just a job. That's a job.
I'm Mr. Steve.
After you've had your few cans of energy drink, you do it then.
Yeah, sometimes. Well, usually I take the energy drink after story time. So but that's the first time I've had to read my own writing to anybody. So.
Yeah.
Did you get it? Did you read that? It was good. Like, I hate read my own writing sometimes. I don't know. Did you read it back and we're like, as you were reading it, like, and then that's not very good.
Well, again, voices on and everything. It was brilliant.
Yeah, I apologize for my horrible English accents because they're supposed to be like Dan Dare and Digby and those characters. So I was trying to do that, but.
Yeah.
It was very impromptu, let's put it that way.
I think it's great with kids' comics because it's a given that basically it's going to be very knowing, isn't it? It's going to be of something else, something which you can relate to. I mean, they do that with the Beano. They drop in different genres and characters, and I'm always for that. It's.
I think the Beano is a funny example because the Beano was like, sorry for all our under 8-year-old listeners on the show right now watching this live just now, but the Beano was shit for about 20 years. Like, I don't know what was going on, but it was like, I don't know what the change is, but I've read some. Me and Dave Cranner were talking about it recently actually, but the Beano's really good now. I don't really know. I don't like.
It was great in the 80s, mate. It was great. Like, everything was great.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I think there definitely seemed to be I remember reading it when I was younger and thinking it was excellent. I felt like, I don't know, I've never felt like the Beano was talked down to children. And then for about 20 years there, the jokes weren't funny. It was all a bit slapstick. And I know the Beano is always a bit slapstick, but more slapstick and less like, always like Ben saying there, the Beano's knowing. Like when I've enjoyed the Beano, it's like, it's a bit like you're in on the joke when it's good and you're reading it. You're like, and I know Sonny's been reading it recently. My 8-year-old, like he's able to see that they're having a joke about how rubbish AI is, despite everyone's worries and stuff like that. And they're, and that's when it's funny. It's like when it's like satire for kids must be really hard to do. I don't know if Stephen.
When did it start going downhill? When did you notice it start?
Oh, I don't know, because I'm going to start talking about. I would say
it went online when it stopped doing paper copy. Is that's the Beano still doesn't do paper copy? Is that right?
No, that's the Dandy.
The Dandy doesn't anymore.
Interesting.
See, the Beano really. I've read some kind of articles about what comics are doing what, and what's succeeded, what's had a hard time. The Beano apparently its subscription went up by 40% during COVID, and it really was a lifeline for a lot of people in that it was something they could engage with their kids. The kids are at home, no school,
right?
And I think the figures have kept good. It's quite a modern success story, and I paid homage. I went to Dundee. I went to the offices. Met with a few people, had me photo taken, stood outside with the, on the street with the characters on the road and everything. We've got Nigel Parkinson, who does Dennis the Menace, not the American one, Dennis the Menace and Nasher. Laura Howell will be in number 2. And these are people who are stalwarts of the comic. They've been, Nigel Parkinson's been doing it, I think, for 30 plus years.
Yeah. Wow.
And I don't think he would do it if he really genuinely thought it was rubbish and didn't have any, kudos or wasn't popular. But there's popular and there's being good, isn't there? And I think it's the the zeitgeist where it's both at the moment. We should send you some copies, Stephen. You should do an ECTB where it's you do the Beano this week.
I've read Beano. I have a pen pal. Well, I mean, part of the whole reason I got involved with the 2000 AD podcast anyway, in the first place, was I've got a pen pal who I've had since the 80s. I had a letter published in 2000 AD, like in 84, 85 or so, and all they printed was my name, the city I lived in, Temple City, California, the state I lived in. And weeks later, I got this it was rolled up. It was like 2 progs and the 80s version of Eagle rolled up, and a letter saying like, I like Vampirella and Warren magazines and horror comics. Would you like to trade 2000 AD for those? And this was like before the internet, so like if you happen to be in a comic store or at a convention and you saw Vampirella comics, that's how you got them. You weren't on eBay or looking for them online or anything. So I was like, yeah, sure, but because I wasn't always finding Vampirella comics, if like when Vertigo started, or if I saw like a good indie horror comic book, I would just like put it in the package with that. And so this package back and forth thing went on for literally for decades. He's still around. He came over to visit last year. He's 85 years old, and
wow.
Yeah. So he started like when he was like in his early 40s or so, and I was like in my 20s, and his family came over and visited us twice, and I went to go visit him over there in the 80s. So it's been a lifelong friendship, and so because he's older, he would include stuff he liked. So that's how I got to see Dan Dare. I got books about Beano and Dandy. I've got a book about Desperate Dan that he sent me. I got some reprints of Valiant. Actually, when he came over to kill time while we were getting ready to go do what we were going to do for the day, he looked at my bookshelf and pulled this reprint of some old Valiant stories. So he's sitting there reading and goes, "These are pretty good. Where did you get them?" And I said, "You sent them to me like 30 years ago." So yeah. So anyway, I had a pretty good background on British comics. He also had a teenage daughter at the time during the 80s, and she would get these teeny bopper magazines, and he'd just throw them in, like, "Here you go, these might be interesting to you." So I have a pretty good run of smash hits from like the mid 80s to the early 90s, and the 2000 AD guy, the guys on my podcast, they give me shit about that, but I'm like, dude, that was a funny magazine. They would ask like the most embarrassing questions of the pop stars, and the American pop stars would be all like, "What kind of question is that?" The British pop stars would just kind of roll, like head shop boys would just roll with it, you know. So anyway, yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, Stephen. If you were a regular on our podcast, we'd give you shit for reading smash hits as well. So
I still have them. You want to read them? Do you want to read the Milli Vanilli interview?
I remember my school library had smash hits. I was too cool for school. I'd never buy it.
Yeah.
You know, my friend had the Blondie posters on the wall, which, you know, we'll leave that there, shall we?
Sure.
but
how did they see the wall?
Literally leave them there because they were
exactly. They're stuck to the wall. Smash Hits was massively successful. I mean, it was at one point possibly the biggest selling youth magazine out there. And now music, I was reading something today, music isn't even shown on television really anymore. You know, it used to be, you know, you think of, I mean, obviously we can say MTV and such like, but the Brits were so well known for having, you know, Top of the Pops, and it was a stalwart. Every week it was on the telly. You had the Old Grey Whistle, you had various music shows on all the channels. And I was just noticing this. There's no music shows anymore, are there? It's like, you know, specific
BBC Two on a Saturday night
just disappeared, including comics. They kind of disappeared, and music disappeared. It's just
BBC Two on a Saturday night will give over the night to Debbie Harry or Pink Floyd or something like that. But it's the internet, just like everything. The internet, you can read. You don't have to buy smash hits to find out what Jason Donovan has for his breakfast anymore. You can just check the internet. And if you go on YouTube, you can watch any music video ever made.
Yeah, I agree that, but what it hasn't got the zeitgeist, because it's not a contemporary issue anymore. It's all about you curating from a library rather than saying what's new, what's happening now. You know what I mean?
And it is at a stage where I think there's a single man in this country over 30 who knows what the number one is or has been for the last 10 years. I couldn't tell you a number one single of the last 10 years.
I don't even know if there's a number one. But I don't even know if there's a number one because there's so many different charts.
Do you not think the Billboard chart still exists in the States, Stephen?
Oh, it does, but it's so many different ones. There's the dance chart, the country chart, the contemporary chart, the urban chart, the rap chart. But it's funny because like
Casey Kasem, the number one song in the land.
I used to love Casey. I used to watch that show all the time.
And coming up next is a band from Boston that started with 1987.
I quite like him. I quite like. I think there's something. Maybe it tickles me because like I get to laugh at capitalism a wee bit. I think it's quite funny when you're like, I have made a wee habit of going to my local on a Friday after work, and there's always a music channel on, and it's always playing like whatever the British charts are just now. But
right.
it's the same artist because of the way that we consume music. So like folk will go and listen to the new Taylor Swift song, and then they'll then stay on Taylor Swift on Spotify. So then because Spotify or like Apple Music or that, and that's and the streaming charts are such a massive part of music consumption now. You get this really funny thing where like, and at number 10 is Taylor Swift, and at number 9 Taylor Swift, and it's like
it's that algorithm. The algorithm is just like, oh, you like that? Here's some more. I'm very hesitant with YouTube to watch certain. Well, I go through my watch history all the time and delete stuff because if you like one thing, it's like, oh, I just watched a video about Star Wars, and then it's like all Star Wars all day long.
I can never
I know, and then they do that thing where they say, "Here's your mix." And you wonder whether they're exporting your mix to other people as well. I don't know if they do that thing with YouTube or not. But what I listen to on YouTube does not reflect my interests at all. It's just what I go, oh, I haven't heard that thing because I don't own it on vinyl or because I've got vinyl collection here. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I managed to, just as an aside, I didn't download or anything like that. I got a Leonard Skinner's album just last weekend because my nephew has a vinyl shop. And it was one of the few that I've known. So.
My vinyl collection is the vinyl records I've had since high school.
I was a kid.
Rush, Journey, Go Tell Me It's Rush, and Boston and Journey and things like that.
No, Gary Newman, Adam and the Ants,
Devo fan,
lots of Devo, it's insane amount of Devo. Not as much Joy Division as you'd think, but I'm glad you're representing. But definitely, and just for context. So we have a store music that we can switch around in our kids department, and then they were playing White Lines, right? And one of my coworkers, we have a coworker that's my age, and then everybody else is like a 20-year-old Zoomer, Gen Z. So my boss, who's like my age, we're saying like, when those 80s songs come on, we just can't not think about the music video that went along with it. Like, you could play Flock of Seagulls and I see that music video in my head while I'm listening to the song. And that doesn't happen for a lot of the Gen Zers. They don't have that kind of context. And we're also...
I read somewhere there as well where that there's the negative repercussions of associating songs with videos, and that apparently Kevin Costner hates that song by Bryan Adams because it created a moment in his career where folks started to genuinely dislike him because the opening part of the "Everything I Do It For You" video was him with a bow and arrow. When that song was getting overplayed in the early 90s, it's Kevin Costner. Oh, it's Kevin Costner. It's Kevin Costner.
Didn't Sycamore Pass on Hadrian's Wall become famous because of that film?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I can't hear Big Country singing their hit Big Country from their album Big Country without imagining those ATV vehicles going through the hillside.
Well, when I think of Big Country, I think of check shirts. That's where I'm at. I reckon, Andy, you had a check shirt. Come on,
I did. But for me, Big Country makes me think of Wolfman and the Clown.
Yes.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah. So anyway,
then you have the association as well, not just the videos. Because vinyl was such a tactile thing, and if you happen to control the album, it's a big thing. The actual graphic from the record is what you remember as well.
Yes.
Yeah. And the lyric sheet. You sit there and read the lyric sheet.
Pour over them, didn't you?
So you're looking at vinyl and you're looking for the inserts to be in it, and the record sheets and things like this. So
I hadn't experienced my new Gary Newman album until I put on the headphones, put on the mood light, and sat there with the lyric sheet and just, fully had the whole beginning to end, side one, side two, the whole epic from beginning to end.
That's a good new album. He was in Bristol, Stephen, the night we were he was at the same hotel. Some of the guests at Lawless spent an evening in some part of the hotel with him after a show, apparently.
Yeah, David Broughton told me he ran into him in the elevator.
Yeah.
But anyway, and just for context, a lot of these 80s, like when Grease came along, it was about 20 years from the 50s where Grease takes place to the 70s when this nostalgia movie came out, right? So that's about 20 years. We're now at this point where from the 80s to now is like double that length of time. It isn't just 20 years between.
I realized, Cab Calloway in 1980, he was obviously, most people of our generation remember Cab Calloway from the Blues Brothers movie, right?
Yes.
Well,
yes.
That Minnie the Moocher was released in 1931, so that's 49 years. And it happened. I think that jazz was that thing that was, in the 70s that the old farts were kind of still going on about.
Yeah, fair.
But it does astonish me that I think now with some of these, your Batman and Superman and stuff, it's not going to be an awful long time before they're 100 years old.
Well, that's the thing too. When Dark Knight Returns came out, what's that? I'm sorry.
Well, see, when Superman the movie came out in 1977, 50 years before that was black and white, silent movies, and Superman will be 50 years old in about 2 years.
Right. Well, also like Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah.
86, I think it was.
About 86, yeah. So Dark Knight Returns, from the time Batman first came out to 86, was about 40-ish some years, right? And that just like revolutionized the whole Batman thing. I mean, it was like, okay, now we've put Batman through a funnel of all the things that made Batman great, and we're going to move forward from there and do like the Tim Burton. They wouldn't have made the Tim Burton movie like they made the Tim Burton movie if it hadn't been for Batman Returns. I mean, Dark Knight, because they were ready. They were fully ready to go with Bill Murray and Eddie Murphy in a campy Adam West type movie. And so they did the Dark Knight Returns, and now we're almost like a couple of years away from it being exactly the time. That's almost like the middle. Dark Knight Returns is almost like the middle of the Batman thing. So
I listened to a radio discussion a couple of years ago where they did that, where they're like, right, we're going to listen to what was the top 3 singles in 1997 in this week. And they did it, and they're like, so I want you to imagine it's 1997, and this is how old you feel. And they did it, and it was Mbop.
Hanson.
And I can't remember what the third song was, but it was like Mbop by Hanson and Bittersweet Symphony by The Verve. Two biggest songs in that month. 25 years ago. And then they went, but then they'd spun it and went, now I want you to imagine that it's 1997. You're sitting listening to these songs as they've just come out, and we're now going to go back 25 years from this point.
Yeah.
And it was fucking American Pie.
Yeah.
By I was just like,
do you ever listen to that Professor of Rock guy on YouTube where he's like, And here's a year that we'll never hear in radio again, 1986. And he'll be playing like stuff from Dirty Dancing or whatever. And he's like, oh, this is the greatest stuff ever. Do you know who that guy is?
I don't.
Oh, anyway.
The best year of music was 1984.
Showing her age. I reckon Kellyanne was at high school, her finishing year. So I was an 83 kid. You know, 83 was, I think Rocky
Class
3.
Class of 1984.
84, yeah.
I had that the other day. I was watching a thing and it was a 30-year-old, like, this is 30-year-old music, 1994. And it was the Manic Street Preachers, Designed for Life. And that's it's modern. That's just a few weeks ago. That's just 30 years.
Well, if you look at an old issue of Deadline, when that stuff was like really cool and edgy and all that, and you're like, they're putting references to Manic Street Preachers in the margins and all their inspirational carpets and all these bands, and I'm like, what the hell are they talking? I mean, it's like, what are they talking about? I don't even remember half of these bands. Half of them weren't even like popular in the States. So,
Max, great. I fell out with Paul Sorensen. I had a drink with Paul Sorensen, Scottish comic creator, and he almost fell out with me because I told him that the Manic Street Preachers. We were talking about who was the best between Blur and Oasis, and I was like, Manic Street Preachers. He's like, nope. Like,
I preferred Pulp at that time. I wasn't really into Oasis.
That says me a lot then about who you are as a human. Actually, I think.
I was like, what was the best pop album? Was it Blur or Oasis? And I would go, it was Mosley Shoals. It was Ocean Colour Scene. Or it was the Verve.
I know they have kind of dominated people's memories of those couple of years, and in fact, there was some great act. Elastica were about, Texas. I mean, a whole bunch of other bands as well. Which
definitely.
Cranberries.
It's funny that you guys were mentioning the Big Country. I'm going to a festival in August. I've got Big Country, Soup Dragons, and Cast. Cast were one.
I like
Soup Dragons. Wow.
Soup Dragons, they were great. Do you know, Big Country, we talked about Wolfman and the Clown, Restless Natives. The guy who played Wolfman just died about a few weeks ago. So he was also, you youngsters all know him from Still Game. He played
oh right, he's died, is he? Okay.
He played the son, Peter Jakey's son, who bought the pub.
Is somebody asking us a question? Are we?
Yeah,
are we that live?
Mine's a different era. Mine's from 1972. It's The Harder They Come, the movie soundtrack to a reggae film. It's a very, very good album.
1985, I think it was 1985 or 6. Highlander. Queen.
Yeah, that's
classic.
You're showing your Scottish bias right there.
Yeah,
so
that's a great film. That's a sci-fi film as well. Plus, I mean, it's a Scottish bias. It's got a Frenchman playing a Scotsman and a Scotsman playing an Egyptian with a Spanish name. And
Christophe Lambert.
and an American playing a Russian.
Ramirez, you Scottish, you Spanish peacock.
You Spanish peacock.
Yeah.
Come from me, woman.
Are you cruising for a piece of ass?
Although John's NFL in the group, I'm trying to think.
To be honest,
John's soundtrack would be.
All right. Well, I'll put in two. Not Star Wars, but Empire Strikes Back.
But the John Williams soundtrack.
The John Williams, yes. But as far as like a soundtrack with pop music, I'm going to say Rocky Horror Picture Show.
It's a musical though. That's cheating a wee bit. You could say it's a musical. We could say, Joseph and his amazing technical.
Okay, well then I'll go with you. I'll go with you for the Queen, Flash Gordon.
Oh, Flash Gordon.
Yes.
Storm or
There's three soundtracks I listen to quite a lot. The first one was back on cassette tape, way back in the day, and that was the Back to the Future soundtrack, which was half Alan Silvestri and then half Johnny B. Good, Earth Angel, Huey Lewis, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
the 90s, and I still listen to it now when I'm drawing. It's the soundtrack for The Rock by Hans Zimmer, which is
Sweet. Sorry, what's the Rock?
That's good. The Rock is it's basically Pirates of the Caribbean. If you listen to The Rock and you go, that's Pirates of the Caribbean. The first time I heard Pirates of the Caribbean, that's the Rock score. And I think sort of early 2000s, Josie and the Pussycats soundtrack.
Dude, that movie is so much better than it needed to be.
Oh, it's so good, isn't it? Yeah, it's so good.
That movie could have been just stupid.
So I think Guardians of the Galaxy have their soundtracks pretty sorted out. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And the Blues Brothers. I mentioned the Blues Brothers album, great R&B album. You know,
and the Commitments, if you like that sort of music. One of those.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff out there. Yeah.
I think folks sleep on it, but actually because it wasn't a very good film. But actually, if you look at if you go on like Spotify or whatever you do and actually look at a playlist, is Captain Marvel has got a fantastic soundtrack because it's set in the 90s. It's got Garbage. I think it's got The Verve. It's got No Doubt. It's all in there, but because it's not a very good film, it's not iconic like The Commitments or Rocky Horror Picture Show or anything like that. So we forget it, and obviously the score is not that great, so you kind of forget. But like for actual tunes, I would throw Captain Marvel in there, and you'd be surprised if you look it up. You're like, oh.
Well, it's funny because on our podcast, I love Flash Gordon, so everything having to do with it. But that was a flop here in the United States. I call it the greatest movie ever made, but it didn't do well. And if you watch like the Bohemian Rhapsody movie, they kind of gloss over that soundtrack pretty much torpedoed Queen's career here in the States, at least. Yeah. So anyway,
do you like Ted for that very reason that the character in Ted?
So I wasn't going to watch Ted. I like what's his name, the guy from Family Guy.
Seth
MacFarlane.
I like Seth MacFarlane, but it was playing in theaters, and I didn't have going to the theater is expensive, and I thought, maybe I'll catch it on TV or video later. So my friend said no. He says, you have to go see this movie. There's 10 minutes in it that will make it absolutely worth your time and money. And so I did, and I was like, my friends are looking out for me.
Okay, so what about bands that weren't bands? So I would say Spinal Tap is a great movie.
Spinal Tap
yes.
Thinking the Lone Rangers from the movie Airheads.
Yes.
The
Lone Rangers.
Their song "Degeneration" is it Degeneration? I can't remember the name of the song, but the actual song that band are trying to get put on the record is fucking. It's an amazing tune. Like, and when you listen to it, you're like, this is a banger, and then you realize it's Brendan Fraser singing. It's like this is.
So
great.
has anyone ever covered that song in a professional sense rather than?
I don't know. It's just a great tune.
Yeah.
Bands that aren't bands, and going back to obviously Josie and the Pussycats again.
Yeah.
It was a film geared towards tweens, young kids, and sort of teens. But basically, there's lots of jokes for everyone in that film. It's fantastic.
Oh yeah,
so many layers to it. But they have a boy band in it, which is Breckin Meyer, Donald Faison, and it's Seth Green, and they're called De Jour. And they've got a song called Backdoor Lover. And this is a kid's film. And as soon as it came on, I was sitting there, Backdoor Lover. Come on, well done. And this is a film for this is a PG. And then at one point there's a sign with Tara Reid. Tara Reid's holding a sign, and it's people driving past, and it's honk if you like pussy. And then the cars crash, and she comes out from behind this tree. Oh, and it says Pussycats. It's a kids' film, goddammit. It's genius. It really is. Honestly, watch Josie and the Pussycats.
Oh, I have it on DVD downstairs. So.
Oh yeah, so do I. Yeah.
The Blues
already
Brothers.
Said in your heads, Kellyanne. The Lone Rangers done it already.
So the Blues Brothers is probably the movie I've seen the most that isn't called Flash Gordon.
Right.
There's a book I've got called Encyclopedia Fake Bandica, and it's about all the bands that were in movies or pop culture that were not actual bands. They were just created for
But the
whatever.
Blues Brothers were a band as well. They became a touring band, didn't
Yes.
they? Dan Aykroyd.
Oh
and
yeah,
they
yeah.
toured for a couple of years. I know.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
a line-
They stood there for a while. Yeah, I think James Belushi came on board. Yeah, and they've toured for a bit as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Also,
learned an awful lot by watching that film. I mean, when it came out, I was only 13.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have the background to know about all the acts there, but it piqued my interest, and I was like all over it. I wanted to find out more about it, as well as the fact that I knew I hated Nazis anyway. That was pretty.
Yeah. Especially Illinois Nazis.
Illinois Nazis are the worst.
Just one of the best films ever made, The Blues Brothers. I think I'd be hard pushed to say whether I liked it better than The Commitments. They're both absolute bangers, but
There was 3 films I used to have on rotation, and they all happened to be 3 Dan Aykroyd films. It was Ghostbusters, The Blues Brothers, and 1941. It was constantly on rotation.
Isn't it? Because that completely bombed, didn't it? It's Spielberg.
It did, but that soundtrack is amazing. You are not wrong about that. Yeah,
that's a great film as well. It's a fantastic film.
I think I was doing three Dan Aykroyd movies. I would substitute 1941, and I would do Grosse Point Blank, which.
Oh yeah, but this film wasn't made then, so this was like
That's a 90s movie, is it? Or something?
Yeah,
I think
1996 or something, 97. Yeah.
I think 1941 cost $20 million to make, and then they spent $10 million on cocaine for everybody.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say more.
They finished making the Blues Brothers, and they said carry the cocaine. But it's not just like John Belushi. I mean, Robert. Who's the older actor who was in it?
Robert Stack.
Robert Stack acted like he was on something.
Steven
Spielberg looked like he was on something.
Yeah.
I love it. Robert Stack's best movie, in my opinion, because Robert Stack's an underrated. Like, I think he just knows. He knew his niche. Have you ever seen the film Basketball? He's in that, and he does like an episode of it. He does an episode of it, Unsolved Mysteries, in that, and it's just things like they're trying to find the missing character, and he's going through the scenarios, and they're like scenario number 1, and the guy's like, I don't care where he is. For all I care, he could be hanging from his neck in his fucking closet. And he's like, scenario number 1, he's hanging by his neck in his fucking closet. And then the next bit's like, and then they ask somebody else, he's like, if you're trying to find him, I suggest you look at the most depraved and disgusting use of exploitation of children on the planet. And Robert Stack's like, scenario number 2, Coop went to Disney World. It's like,
I think he also did a voice for Beavis and Butthead Do America too.
Yeah, he did.
He basically plays himself in that too. So yeah,
we're forgetting of bands that are not bands. I think we're forgetting the band that saved the world with their music, and that's the Wild Stallions.
The Wild Stallions.
Yeah, I was. I was about to. Of course. Yeah.
What about I'll see you Wild Stallions. Anyone remember the band Stillwater?
Oh, from Almost Famous.
Almost Famous.
Yeah.
Okay. So what about School of Rock? What about the School of Rock then?
School of Rock. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because someone has to explain to me. Because is Tenacious D an alternate universe, or is it a real? Is it in the same universe I live in? I don't quite get it.
Yeah, it's a good question.
I think Tenacious D is a tribute to a band. They're not actually a band. They're a tribute. They're not the greatest band in the world.
Yeah, I think Tenacious D is about as much of a real band as the Blues Brothers became. They kind of. Okay, here's one for you. If you know what it is, your brain's going to melt.
Okay.
The Juicy Fruits.
Is that?
Come on, you know it.
That's chewing gum across here. Juicy fruit.
I'm looking at the fellow I'm looking at the older guys. The Juicy Fruits.
We're all up. Oh yeah, Jeff's the only one who's not old here. So.
Yeah, when you talk about the best year of music,
I think I might be the oldest one actually. But, yeah.
Help us out.
Their songs were actually written by Paul Williams.
We're all googling it. We try not to look like we're googling.
No idea.
It was a Brian De Palma movie.
Oh,
It was.
Scarface. Harry.
Technically, it's a musical, a rock and roll musical.
Brian De Palma.
Phantom of Paradise.
Phantom of the Paradise. Yeah.
Brian De Palma did a musical.
Oh, you didn't know? Yeah, Phantom of the Paradise is the story.
Do they explode a lot?
Yes, somebody does explode. Yes, it's a rock and roll musical. It was one of his first films. It's the story of Faust meets Phantom of the Opera. The costume is iconic.
Oh,
Paul Williams, who's in it, and he wrote the songs for it, and it is fucking amazing.
Shooting at things.
It is definitely a product of its time. Jessica Harper from the Rocky Horror sequel Shock Treatment's in it. She's also in Suspiria, if you like old-timey horror movies.
Okay.
So anyway, when that says the state of comics that we've been talking about music.
I think we've eked out the sort of geekery aspect of our podcast a wee bit more than we. Will we come back to the 77 sort of lulls and like what you guys are up to for about 5 or 10 minutes before we move on to sort of geekery? So
okay.
So
Chance to plug
yeah, we want you to plug away. So please tell us it. So I put the link to the Kickstarter in the comments, and I'll put them on the screen as well for anyone that.
Thank you very much.
So you know what that looks like.
It's gone up £40 since the show started. So you know
that's the value of the Brewgooders. Maybe we can talk about music some more then. Well, like
I believe the man has their price. Your price is.
Yeah, what we're doing next is we're doing a musical. We're doing a musical about bands that never existed. I think what we've learned from this is that's definitely the way to.
Dude, if I could make the Cavaliers into a musical with guinea pigs, I so would. Anybody who's got another £40 that they want to donate, I will start making that.
So I think it's safe to say that you will get funded. If you're not funded by like the weekend, I would be super surprised.
Bless. I know. I'm still in that kind of angst state, and it's ridiculous. It's my 26th Kickstarter now, having done 4 guest ones and 22 for the 77. You know, you kind of until you hit that goal, it's always just Jeff, you've done it yourself, mate. You know what it's like.
Yeah. I would never want to run one, but I'll be the guest on somebody's. But Ben, you know, the thing is, like, I know you were anxious about it because it's like new waters for you and it's something different. But I mean, I saw the photos of Lawless of the Lawless Comic-Con, and overwhelmingly there was like nobody under the age of 40 there. It was all people our age, somewhere between 40 and our age, and some elder statesmen as well.
Yeah.
And those people that age, they're the ones with the money. They're the ones who are on Kickstarter, and a lot of them have kids and grandkids.
Well, this is the point. We're not directly selling to children, are we? We're selling to people who are going to buy the comics for the kids. You know, that's
right.
Honest. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different dynamic because when in my store, kids will come in with a gift card or money that they got for Christmas, and they will ask for
to go to the bookstore. They've been told to go to the bookstore.
Right, and they when they have their own money or their own whatever to spend.
I mean,
they ask,
anything else. Yeah.
They'll ask for Dogman, Minecraft stuff,
right?
The things you would expect, but because it's kind of you're marketing to parents and grandparents who can go like, oh, I've always wanted to get my kids into comics.
With Kickstarter through advertising with Facebook, it's all about putting those keywords in and knowing what people's appetites are, their interests, and you don't necessarily have to put comics in. You just need to put the things in that parents who want children aspirationally to be reading are interested in. So, you know, you actually do put things in like theatre and opera.
Well, you know, the Cavaliers does have some educational value. It has, I mean, we were concerned that the vocabulary might be too highfalutin for
Absolutely.
the 7-year-old. So.
But I think the fact is you are going to create a space opera in issue 2. It's going to be amazing. I think we do need to. I want to see a Cavalier in a tutu. You know,
We can do it.
So I mean,
I think it's important that you acknowledge though in literature, one of my or in any art form that you don't like. We talk about it a lot, and you'll have it embedded in education about like your differentiation and making sure that like you change your language or you diversify what you're presenting so that all it's accessible to all. But I also part of me does think. I think Doctor Who is a perfect example, or talked about Josie and the Pussycats. Like, I'm not going to compare the value of Doctor Who and Josie and the Pussycats in the same conversation, even though that's what it sounds like I'm doing. But I'm trying to give another example. I was watching something with Sunny, and it's totally escaped me. We're like, it's all right not to talk down, like, because you're wanting to engage young people, but you also want to expand, and you want them to rise somewhat to what you're presenting, so that they, so it becomes an education.
So the conversation that Steve and I had, and we can discuss this because it's a live situation, and we're thankfully we're through it. Was Steve tells a lot of jokes, and they're concept jokes, and I just wanted him to be aware that the language has to be a certain, for the kids to be able to come along and follow the concept. Otherwise, they just don't know what that word is. They'll have to guess the word, and they might not get the concept. So,
right.
Telling a joke is not an easy thing at all. Writing a joke is 10 times harder. So I'm really impressed because, Stephen, you must have written 6 jokes a page. I mean, every other panel is a joke.
It's pretty dense. It's pretty dense.
Yeah.
But here's the thing too, like the difference between Dogman and the many, many rip-offs and imitations of Dogman is that the guy who does Dogman, his name's Dave Pilkey, and he's been doing it for decades. He's also the Captain Underpants guy. So he did Captain Underpants for more than 10 years before he jumped over to Dogman. And the joke of Dogman is that the 2 troublemaking kids from Captain Underpants created this comic, and that comic was Dogman, and you were reading the comic created by these kids. So that's why the artwork is crude, and that's why there's misspellings in the words. And it's like the comic you would have made when you were in 5th grade, and if you were a troublemaker.
Someone told me that if you take all of the sales of the big 3-4 comic producers in the States, that's what Dogman sells every single book. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I told you that, but it's true.
It's
still true yesterday. It's true yesterday when I told you, and it's true today when you told me. So the thing is, though, that there's jokes in Dogman that, well, there were jokes in Captain Underpants. The kids got in trouble one day because they were playing Weird Al Yankovic music over the school speaker system, and I was like, well, that's a pretty cool pop culture reference. And it's even cooler because Weird Al ended up doing the theme song for their animated movie that they made later. But in Dogman, for example, it takes place, or Captain Underpants takes place at the Jerome Horwitz Middle School. I'm going to look at you, Ben. Do you know who Jerome Horwitz is or was?
I know an Adam Horowitz, but that's not the same person.
Jerome. Yeah, you're too cool for this one. Jerome Horowitz is the real name of Curly Howard from the Three Stooges, which is why Captain Underpants looks like Curly from the Three Stooges. Someone in one of the Dogman books has 3 goldfish, and the goldfish are named Tony, Orlando, and Don. And I have to sit there and I have to explain that joke to parents because they weren't around in the 70s when Tie the Yellow Ribbon Around the Old Oak Tree was a hit. There was a joke about somebody using Kung Fu grip. So if you ever played with the original G.I. Joe, or Action Man as you called them, that had the rubber hands that could hold the weapons, the Kung Fu grip, so I'm explaining that joke to parents. It's like, and then their eyes glaze over because they don't care, but I care. But anyway, so I told the sales rep for Scholastic came to check out, our store and see everything. And I told her, I said, I explained the jokes to the Scholastic sales rep, who's about my age, but she, that kind of stuff doesn't really matter to her. But she was like literally taking notes. And I said, you guys should do, because they're always looking for some new way to package and repackage Dogman. Because whatever first it was in black and white, then it's in color, then it's like got the special edition, and then they added some pages, blah, blah, blah. It's every time they repackage it, it's another $12 in Dave Pilkey's pocket. So I said, you guys should do like an annotated edition of Dogman that explains all the 50-year-old guy jokes in it. And they were like, so.
Yeah. So yeah, I love that sort of stuff. I love it. I quite like it encourages conversation as well. Or I would hope that that's an aspect of that, like sticking in elderly jokes. So yeah, like I think anything that encourages conversation between like parents and children and all that sort of stuff is a good thing.
I can genuinely say, so yeah, the reason that we produce the comic is because when we go to shows, some of the bigger ones, I'm doing LFCC in a couple of weeks, do the big shows. The parents drag the kids around, right? The parents are the ones that wanted to go and see something. That cosplayer, Chuck Norris, whoever. And the kid there wanders past, and there's a vague interest in the comics and looks at them. And I know that child is not my reader because they're 8 years old and our stuff is just not for 8-year-olds. So I want to be able to honestly thrust something in a parent's hand saying, this is good for them. I'm an educator. I've written this for your kids to be able to help them learn the joy of reading and be totally satisfied about it at the same time. And that's what the parents like about Dogman or Dog Boy or whatever it's called. I mean, and it sells by the so.
Yeah. Well, the parents are iffy about it because of the bad grammar and the purposely misspelled words. But some of them are so desperate to get their kid to read anything that they'll even overlook that. So.
I know.
I think as long as the conversation happens and stuff like that, I think it's silly to hand something over and just expect that to. That shouldn't be the end.
Guys, when you've all backed me, you'll get your copy, and you'll pay for Steve to come over. We want him over at Lawless next year.
Well,
exactly.
Well, I mean, the Lulz is such a mixed bag. It really does have something for everyone, I would like to say. So it's more of a sampler paddle.
Or come up to the Thought Bubble. Thought Bubble's the one that these guys would go to. So
Yeah, I would love next year. I would love to.
I still can't work out whether it's
we go, and literally thousands of more interesting people also go. So it's quite good.
Oh, I've been to San Diego, San Diego Comic-Con more than once. And Ben, you're invited. If you want to stay here at the Aladdin's Cave condo.
Dude. How can we sneak in there though? We have to go under the tent. They have always that story in the kids' comic that the kids go under the tent.
There's no tent to go under. You'd have to.
We stand on each other's shoulders and we get into the adult show. Do you know what I mean? That's what the kids always used to do.
Right.
We'll find a way.
Well, I mean, they basically did that joke in the Obi-Wan show too. Where Princess Leia is like hiding under his coat, and they got past the Imperials that way. So
that's mad. Right. Well, we shift over to our sort of geekery stuff. So I would normally let you guys shoot off at this point, but
I am going to have to shoot off.
No, it's always a pleasure, man. We'll catch you in a few months in Harrogate.
Yeah, see you at Thought Bubble. And everybody, including the people in the room here, don't forget to back the comic, because otherwise Steve will be sad. And,
the guinea pigs won't have any carrots.
No.
The guinea pigs need their lettuce.
Always great to catch up, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Just back.
Take care. Bye.
Leave.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't realize.
Throw away.
I didn't realize Steve was going. It's fine. But no, thank you, Steve. Thank you, Ben. I will put up the links again. And you need the 77 do amazing stuff and work with such a great creators. Too many to name. So you saw like Louis Stringer is going to be in the Lols again. Working with the group again. Obviously, they've been working with Wagner, and then guys like Brendan Wright and guys like Dave Healy, Joe Healy, Anna Morozova, just like, and that's just the guys off the top of my head. So my favorite thing is that as part of like the thing that I do in the podcast, I have the green room on show, and Ben's still floating around doing stuff. Now he's giving me the finger. Right. So, yeah. So I sort of geekery stuff this weekend. What have you guys been watching, reading, shouting at?
I have been. I'm very much looking forward to one of my favourite shows coming back. First trailer dropped last week, so I've been catching up on the first three seasons of that show. And as I was raking in the box the other day, I overcame this, and I thought, I'm gonna have to give it a go.
Oh, nice one.
I think it's, for me, it's not my favourite comic of all time, although it's a very, 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 very good comic. I think it's the best adapted comic into a TV show there's been. I know some people will agitate for The Boys and things like that, but I think the Umbrella Academy adaptation on Netflix is just absolutely phenomenal. And very much looking forward to the fourth and final season coming. I'm going to catch up on the books and see if I can get myself up to date on that as well. So that's what I've been reading.
That's a good one. You recommended the Umbrella Academy last week, and I've got a friend who watches, and they watched the Umbrella Academy and they watched Ted Lasso in the last week based on what we were blathering about last week, and said we've totally like genuinely watch programs based on our recommendations. So
well, in that case, I've got a good one for them. I've got a good show that I discovered just during the week there by accident. I was on. I just finished watching The Fall Guy, which was based on recommendation from last week, which is fantastic. Really loved The Fall Guy. It was always my plan to watch it at some point, but I just couldn't get out to the cinema. And it's appeared on streaming, so I just rented it, and it was fantastic. So I was looking for something after that, and I went on Apple TV Plus, and I discovered a show called The After Party. Has anyone heard of that?
I saw that you posted about it, but I had not.
Yeah, I'd never heard anything about it, and I just clicked on it. I saw the cast, and it's basically people that you love from shows that you love. You know, people from Veep, people from Parks and Rec, just people from Ted Lasso. Just really, really good cast. And it has the best Franco, Dave Franco.
We hate Dave Franco. Taking Alison Brie and taking her away from us all.
Yeah. Well, basically, yeah, it's a murder mystery show, and each episode, one of the people suspected of the murder tells their story, but each episode is stylistically different, and it sounds, but it's actually really, really good. So if you like Sam Richardson from Veep or Ted Lasso or Ben Schwartz, Sonic the Hedgehog, or as John Raffio from Parks and Rec, you will like The After Party. It's really good. 8 episodes, half an hour each. Season 1, cracking. Season 2, a bit longer, but another great cast again. John Cho, just a fantastic show. So
is that a different cast in season 2? Yeah.
Recommended.
Is that a completely different cast in season 2? Or is it?
You've got the same kind of main characters, but it's a different murder, obviously.
It's Tiffany Haddish.
So it's
like that. Who's the
Tiffany Haddish? Yeah, she's the main character. Yeah, so it's like I've got vibes of Only Murders in the Building, when it first started. I've got that kind of vibe to it, but it's a completely different show, and it's by Miller and Ward, from Spider-Verse and 21 Jump Street and lots of other good things. So highly recommended the After Party.
Yeah, I did check it. I genuinely hadn't heard of it until you suggested it in the group chat, and I was like, "Oh, okay, I'll give it a go."
Yeah, that's good.
I watched the first episode of the Acolyte, which I think came out last week.
Just 2 days ago, but yesterday.
So, yeah, I wasn't sure because there's 2 episodes available, isn't there? So
2 episodes. Yeah.
So I thought, but meh. They're just generic. Like, didn't even feel necessarily. There wasn't even enough Star Wars in it to make you feel like you're in the Star Wars universe. Like, I know there was Jedi's and stuff happening in it, but just not that engaging. Like, I actually, like, I'm not even gonna lie, I fell asleep 10 minutes into the program, watching it with Sean, and was able to wake up and go, "What's going on?" And Sean was able to just say, "Oh, like, there's maybe 2 of them." That was basically it. It was just like, "Oh, okay."
I just came home from work and I watched the first episode. I was going to watch the second episode, but fell asleep.
I'm going to cut that down to like our short for the week, like our review of the Acolyte. 2 of the 3, the 2 members of the podcast that watched it dozed off.
But in saying that,
I haven't watched it yet, although it is on my list. Ahsoka Tano is on my list, and so Mandalorian.
It was okay. It was okay. Not a lot happened, did it? It was only half an hour long, which took away the opening logos and the end credits. It made me want to watch the next episode, but unfortunately, Brimson's 5 and an hour off. That's why I was almost late for the podcast tonight, because I just woke up and, oh shit.
A couple of weeks ago, I sort of was semi-raving about a show that I'd started watching on Apple TV as well, called The Shining Girls.
Yes.
I can thoroughly, like, phenomenal. Just the acting in it, the storyline. It's Jamie Bell's great in it. Elizabeth Moss, Wagner Moura, Philippa Sue, who, if you know anything about musical theatre, she was one of the original cast in Hamilton. She's in it. It's you can tell it's based on a really, really good sort of sci-fi thriller book. The writing's just very, very, very good. So if you're looking for something new, you have Apple TV, The Shining Girls.
I've been watching, like, it's all 12 seasons. I didn't realize there was that many. I caught a show, and I don't know where. I started watching a show the start of this year, and I thought it was a recommendation I originally thought it was a recommendation from John, and then remember thinking, oh, it might actually have been Andrew. I started watching this Canadian hockey series called Shoresy, and actually it's great, but I have no idea who recommended it to me. And I've given both of you the credit at some point. Despite
not me.
The 3rd season for anyone that's interested, the 3rd season of Shoresy's just dropped, and it's brilliant. But it's a spin-off of a series that's, I say, it's been running for 12 seasons. You can watch all 12 seasons on ITVX in the UK. It's called Letterkenny, and
Letterkenny, that's about the brothers. There's 3 brothers.
I've seen Letterkenny. Yeah, that's good.
That one, yeah.
So Shoresy's a spin-off of Letterkenny.
All right.
Great show. I didn't realize Letterkenny even existed. I saw Shoresy before Letterkenny, so I'm now loving the fact that I've now got 12 seasons of a new program to watch. But great stuff.
Whenever I see something that's if there's 12 seasons of it, you get excited if it's really, really good. But I can't think of a show that I've watched 12 seasons of any show. Like, I only managed 6 or 7 of Supernatural. I mean, Star Wars, Star Trek, I suppose, if you take into account them all, I've done more than 12 seasons. Smallville was 10 seasons, and that felt like it was on forever.
That was long, yeah.
I think short, punchy seasons is usually better. 12 seasons would be terrifying.
So Letterkenny is a sitcom, so like each episode's only like 21 minutes long, 22 minutes long, so it's good. It's good, and it's
supposed to be 10 seasons though. The Office was like 7 seasons.
Yeah, that's
9 seasons.
8 seasons was it?
The Office was 9 seasons.
No, 7 seasons.
Mm.
You're talking about the after Michael left seasons, aren't you? There was no seasons after Michael.
Are you going to watch the? You going to watch the spin-off? The paper?
It's more of an inspired by, I think. It's in the same universe, which is
it's the same universe, yeah.
I'm assuming Mike Shure has something to do with it. And
I hope they get the paper from Dunder Mifflin.
Yeah.
That'd be genius.
But
what I'm going to watch...
Or they don't, and that's the tie-in.
What I think.
You ever watch Reno 911?
Oh, yeah. It's a good show.
I picked up the box set the other day, yeah. Fantastic. Look forward to that.
Excellent.
So that's going to be a good watch, I reckon.
I want to recommend this week's Doctor Who before I forget. Called I can't remember what the episode was called. The Bubble and Dot. Bubble and Dot is what it was called. I don't know if anyone's seen it.
I've watched it, yes, and it was nippy as hell. It was so nippy. Kind
of the point, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it was so spot on in its nippiness that I was like, oh god, I can't take it. It's so nippy. But it's basically we've only got 8 episodes of those two together, the Doctor and the companion, Millie Gibson and Shuti Gatwa, because she's not in the next season. They've already got another companion. There's only 8 episodes, and so far we've had 2 episodes where they haven't been together, basically, for most of the episode, because he was off filming.
It is standard for a Russell T Davies Doctor Who season, but because it's only 8 episodes and not I want to think the standard's 10. But
it's because we had the first 2 episodes dropped at once, and then we're getting the last 2 episodes dropped at once as well, because they're getting a cinema release. But it's because Shuti Gatwa was off filming Sex Education, and his schedules didn't line up, and it's like it's a bit weird.
That by the way, is a great show. If you've not seen it. Is it on Amazon? I think it's either on Amazon or Netflix.
Netflix, isn't it?
Netflix. Yeah.
It's an absolutely great show. It falls off the cliff a wee bit in the last season, as a lot of shows do. But the first couple of seasons in particular, just genius.
Yeah. I really like this week's Doctor Who. I thought and like we were saying earlier to like Ben and Stephen, I accidentally I don't know why. I don't know if I was just tired or whatever. But there was allusions or like suggestion at the end of the season that was quite on the nose, and I completely missed it about why the main characters didn't like the Doctor.
Yeah,
because totally flew over. It genuinely flew over my head, and it wasn't until I read the review afterwards, and then asked Sonny, who's my 8-year-old, and I was like, Sonny, like, did you clock why they didn't want to go with the Doctor at the end? And Sonny's like, without even making eye contact with me, he's doing something on his laptop. He was like, it's because the Doctor's black. It's just like, oh, how did I miss that? It was like,
it was.
It was just mad, and it wasn't what I was expecting. And like when you reflect back on it, you're like, I didn't even notice that, and that's probably a reflection on society in general as well, and that like it, I didn't even notice that was a thing. I really liked it. It's funny that I probably like this week's Doctor Who for the same reasons you didn't like it, John. Like I thought the annoyingness was quite clever. Like, oh, these guys are really dislikable, but that's like the whole point.
No, I don't know. There's just something off about it. It's a bit weird. It's like Doctor Who's it's been slightly off for a while. It's not like it's really, really bad. It's just as you found the Acolyte, it's not great Doctor Who anymore. To me, it's a bit weird. I don't know, what I'm talking about.
I mean, people our age moan that it's not for us anymore. And it's a shame because I think when it came back, it was for kids, but it was also for us. And I'm not going to say it's the Disneyfication over the last Doctor and then the one before that and then this one. That made it different, but
if you think about it, the last episode was called 73 yards,
which
is not a metric that we use, isn't it? It's like we say feet. And if they do say that in the episode, they do go, such and such meters, such and such feet, but it's called 73 yards, and it's like that's not a metric that we use. So so that's like, okay, that's what obviously that's made for the Disney audience,
Yeah.
I've not heard anything about. I've not heard anything about how Doctor Who's been perceived in the US. Am I right? I don't have I've got a few friends that watch it that live in the US, but even then, it's like they're in the minority. I don't know how. I've not got Disney Plus, so is Doctor Who presented in the same format that like Marvel and when you go on
it's not on our Disney Plus. It's not on UK Disney Plus. But I'm going to assume it's pretty much the same. Yeah, it'd be like the Whoniverse.
Yeah.
So, but I don't think they have all the classic BBC shows that we have on.
They've got Torch. I think Disney. They've got Torchwood and the Sarah Jane Adventures and
but they don't have all the classic stuff. Yeah, so it'll be under the Whoniverse. Yeah, so.
Americans only going to watch like the fans who are fans of Doctor Who, the fans who've always been fans of Doctor Who in America will absolutely watch the classic Doctor Who. Modern Americans who are just coming into it and like Judy Gatwa and things like this will not watch William Hartnell, will not watch Clifton or Pertwee or even Tom Baker or something like that. They're just not going to watch it.
This is a shame because obviously past its dated exterior and like behind the timesness and British, like quite niche British sensibilities, it's a beautifully written show, particularly in like that.
So some of them were 8 30-minute episodes. Originally, that's 3 to 4 hours for one story.
Yeah,
people just didn't have that concentration level anymore. So
I shared yesterday. William Russell passed away. That was quite that was quite sad. One of the original companions in the TARDIS, 99. He's also saw a fact last year because he shows up very briefly in one of the last Jodie Whittaker story. Mm-hmm. He's in that. He's in that for a couple of seconds, which officially makes him the longest serving member of Doctor Who. Like the gap between his last episode before that, his first episode
that's pretty cool.
It's like 58 years or something. It's like there's no Doctor.
Only the guy who plays Ken Barlow on Coronation Street has played the character for more consecutive years because he was 4 when he started.
Yeah, it's mad. He was 4 when he started, but he always looked like he does right now.
I think he was 20 or 21 or something like that. And but he's always from about 10 years after that. Ken Barlow always looked like a man in his mid-50s. So,
we love it.
He was on these tenders. That guy's never had a fucking real job in his life. He was at school when he was scouted for that job, and then or Toadie from Neighbours or something like that as well. He was another one.
Toadfish.
What I love about Ian Beale as a character, what I love about Ian, I don't watch EastEnders, but what I love about the idea of Ian Beale as a character is with all the death and destruction and fucking horrendousness that happens in EastEnders every Christmas, even if you just take the years of Christmas episodes and the amount of like devastation and tragedy that befalls Albert Square every Christmas, Ian Beale is the slimiest, fucking greasiest, most horrendously weak human being is still like alive and kicking, and they're like, how how have you survived?
It's the cockroach thing. You know how cockroach are the only thing that survived a nuclear war.
Yes. Ian Beale.
Like the world will explode and he'll still be like operating is it a corner shop he owns or something?
I didn't actually watch EastEnders. I've never. I think back in
when you watch Fallout and like there's that episode in Fallout when like they have to go and get the ghouls have to get the ghouls have to get that like medic pack to keep themselves going. Yeah, and then they go into Ian Beale's shop to like pick them up. It's that. So I don't know if anyone's got anything else they want to blather about. I feel like I warned us at the start, Bensky was going to take the podcast to alarming tangents, which is why we have him on. But I just want to say very briefly about Saturday. We're in Dundee. Me and Andrew are there. Tom, our brother from a Brew from the Terrace. Stu's going to be there. It's going to be like we're running 2 quizzes throughout the day. Our friends at the Beer Comics, not Beer Comics, that's us. The Beer Football and Punk Rock, the Beer Football and Punk Rock podcast are going to be there. We've already got a row. Well, I got a row, I should say, off of Dundee Brewfest for trying to incite violence between the 2 podcasts.
I'm meeting the guys. We're discussing a place for me. So Beer, Football, and Punk Rock is absolutely me. It's absolutely my fault. I'm jumping.
It's a great show, man. It's a fucking quality podcast. Like, it's one of my faves. One of my favorite moments. Like, when we started the Brewgooders, I used to get ripped relentlessly off my friend Jamie. Everyone calls him Jim, but he's like one of my childhood friends, Jamie. He used to rip me for like craft beer being shit and like you should always just drink cider. And he runs the list and interviews for the Beer Football Punk Rock podcast. So he like in the last 2 or 3 years he's adopted craft beer, and all of a sudden all his rippings of me have stopped, and I'm like, oh,
Well, I'll be thinking of you when I'm at work.
No, sorry, man.
I couldn't get the time off, so it's one of those things.
Yeah. You get November off. We're all going to go down to Top Bubble. Make sure you got that weekend off. That'll be good.
We'll see. We'll see.
Good. Football's like, I know you've been to conventions locally and things like that. Football's quite special. Like, it's very special.
Just going down as a punter this year, so I'm looking forward to just not having to like stand at a table. And
I feel like an actual Valkyrie at Top Bubble.
Right.
Yes, you did.
Fair enough.
And I got to meet one of my favorite podcasts. Has Dungeons and Daddies has an artist that does all their thumbnails, and it's a Dungeons and Dragons podcast, not a BDSM podcast.
Yeah, I was just going to say Dungeons and Daddies. That sounds a bit kind of just you sit in a basement with pictures of Pedro Pascal around you.
Yeah. That's their sketch. Even on their thumbnails, it's got Dungeons and Daddies, not a BDSM podcast.
Right. Okay.
They say that at the start of the episode, and they've just announced their first European tour, which is gutting because it's happening while I'm at work. And I know folk that are going to it and are winding me up about it, and it's not fair. But on their tour posters, they're going Dungeons and Daddies European tour, not a BDSM tour. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sorry. So come and see us in Dundee.
Over there.
Bonner Hall all day. There's 2 settings. Make sure you get your tickets. That'll be fun.
Cool. Have fun, guys.
We will do. And thanks very much again for joining us, guys. We'll. John, what the fuck are you doing? You're tipping up.
I'm on the move. That's the wife coming home. So I need to open the door. I'm mobile.
We're walking.
Yes.
I was at a meeting today with somebody who had to change desks at work during the meeting, and so they did the thing where they walked along and still talking, holding the thing, and then we'll get this for her age, John. She called it doing an Annika.
Oh yeah, Annika Rice, yeah. Treasure hunt.
Did Annika ever get the treasure? It was a bit like Nightmare, that program Nightmare. I don't remember anyone actually winning it.
Probably, I think so, but it wasn't a treasure. It would be a fitted kitchen from MFI or something like that.
The leftover prizes from Bullseye, yeah.
An uninsurable speedboat that they win, but then just don't take out the studio.
Let's have a look what you would have won. Speedboat. 2 guys who live in Bolton.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right, team. Everyone have a lovely weekend, whatever it is you're doing.
Yep.
Join us next week. I think we've got another guest coming in next week. I'm just trying to firm it up before I announce it. And yeah, everyone have an amazing time, whatever you're doing this weekend. Next weekend will be quite a weird one. I'm really excited. I'm hoping to do extra bits and pieces for the podcast because Scotland are in an international football tournament, so I would hope to try and grab Andrew for some Brew from the Terrace stuff. But also, there's a big wrestling show on the Saturday in Glasgow, so me and Stu might be doing something for that as well. So beer, comics, football, and wrestling all happening in the next week, which will be good fun.
And again, a couple of us next Saturday, a couple of us, myself, I don't know if you're coming up actually, Jeff, me and Colin, we're going up to Dundee and we're going to do 2 comics one day.
Yes.
2 girls,
the
1 con.
yeah.
No, 2 cons one day.
I may be persuaded. I don't think I'm doing anything else other than the wrestling at night. So that might be a good banner. Yeah.
Yes, cracking.
We'll have it. But yeah, we'll catch everyone next week. Beer, comics, sort of keep it all and all the other nonsense in between. Cheers, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.